microwave foil or the oil, they annoy you. You add another snick for the wrong reasons. Election years now seeming like full-blown seasons.
This is MagMongoSlade, and welcome to 3-Count Commentaries. And we are gathered here today to go through the Charlotte-Becky Lynch beef. The latest chapter of which has taken place October 2021. The episode of SmackDown, which I believe was October the 21st or 22nd, where Charlotte and Becky Lynch got into a bit of a tiff backstage at SmackDown over what was supposed to take place during their segment, where Charlotte apparently dropped or threw, however you want to put it, the Raw Women's Championship that she was supposed to give to Becky, and Becky threw the SmackDown Women's Championship, which she was supposed to give to Charlotte. Now, apparently, from all of the reports, all the gossip, which we're all going to assume is true for the sake of this conversation. So if you say, it's probably bullshit, I mean, it might be. But we're going to assume that it's true for the sake of having this conversation. So this led to a lot of arguing, a lot of heat, a lot of tension, a lot of frustration, a lot of mean tweets, and a big old FU from Andrade and several others who have now decided that whether they are in Team Charlotte or Team Becky about which one of these two was in the right. Now, according to the dirt sheets, the way that the segment was supposed to go was that Charlotte was supposed to hand over her title, being compliant and knowing that she's going to get the SmackDown Women's title. But Becky was supposed to snatch the belt, have both belts, proclaim herself Becky 2 belts, before ultimately throwing the SmackDown Women's title back at Charlotte. Charlotte did not seem to like this very much because she thought that it made her look silly and it put Becky over a little too much. So she was not for it, and therefore she kind of decided to go off script and throw the belt on herself. It was also said that it was an accident, that she dropped the belt kind of by accident. In any event, I will say this, Sonya Deville did a great job. She was excellent as the very angry authority figure when Charlotte dropped the belt and she demanded that Charlotte pick it up. That was really good. So if none of this was in the script, then Sonya Deville did a really great job of making it seem like it was. In any event, backstage, the two of them got into an argument. They said to have been close friends up until about 2018 when the man gimmick started. And Becky started taking pot shots at Charlotte and how she looked and how her body was changing. And all the time off she needed because she was having surgeries and different things like that. So Charlotte is said to not be in the best of moods. And she's been having trouble after trouble after trouble. Since she returned, there was the issue with the pregnancy that had her missing WrestleMania. There was the breast implants last year. She missed a lot of time for that. She also missed time in 2018 and 2019 over surgeries. There was several comments that Becky had made specifically about Charlotte's cheekbones, where she claims Charlotte bought her cheekbones. And she's also have taken plenty of pot shots at Charlotte over Twitter about Charlotte's changing appearance and all this other stuff. So Charlotte is not friendly with Becky. And they don't really want to work together. And apparently Wade Keller now says that nobody wants to work with Charlotte, which I don't believe. But again, we're going to assume all the dirt sheets are true for the sake of this conversation. So we can see, going way back to 2018, which was around the time the demand started, Becky has kind of really done a good job of getting herself over by using Charlotte as a trampoline. Essentially, whenever things get too dire for Becky, she always can fall back on everybody hates Charlotte. I could take a pot shot or a cheap shot at Charlotte and everybody would be on my side. Even coming after this thing on October 22nd, 2021, it is that Becky is the locker room leader because she stood up to Charlotte, and Charlotte has been a petulant child because this was not that big of a deal. And Charlotte has been very difficult to work with anyway, especially after the WrestleMania thing and the whole stuff with Andrade, because she's the one who told Andrade to leave. And then she went and maybe quote unquote applied some pressure in order to get his 90 days waived, that kind of stuff. So it's been a lot of anti-Charlotte material out there. Now, Charlotte doesn't do herself any favors. You know, she has a history of no selling, being really rough with people. Like she was really rough with Nikki on Raw a couple of months ago, where she basically just beat the tar out of Nikki. She sandbags people. She really tries her best to bury folks if she can. And she's generally a spoiled brat. All of that stuff is pretty much true. All the stuff about the surgeries and her needing time off to fix her boobs again and again, at least once a year, Charlotte has to fix her boobs. Yes, that is absolutely true. So what's the big deal? You know, the fact that Becky is tweeting in character and taking shots at Charlotte, or is it personal? We'll never know. But there is one thing that is an absolute fact, and there's one reason why I actually believe a lot of this stuff might be true, is because there can only be number one. There can only be one. Only be one top dog. You know, in any society, in any population, there can only be one. If you can go back in history, you know, Hogan and Savage, Bret and Shawn, Sonny and Sable, you know, and Luna and Sable. You can only have one. Medusa and Luna, despite the fact what Medusa says, that, you know, oh, we got along, we were best friends. No. Luna said out of her own mouth that her and Medusa had more fights backstage than they did in the ring. You can only have one top dog. And if somebody is being pushed, expect other people to want that push, right? So for years it was Charlotte. Charlotte was the one that they really groomed from the bottom. She was a recruit from WWE. She has never worked anywhere else. And despite the fact that her and Becky are around the same age, Becky has far more experience because she's worked all over the world. And she probably had more bumps than Charlotte has ever taken. So that, to me, is why a lot of people on the internet sees that Becky Lynch is the locker room leader and the most mature and that kind of thing, despite the fact that you can literally have evidence of Becky Lynch taking a lot of cheap shots at Charlotte on Twitter. This kind of stuff is real. So a lot of the stuff that we hear about Charlotte is implied gossip. You know, some of the stuff we can see, like her sandbagging, purposefully having bad matches with people like Lacey Evans, purposefully getting into it with Nia Jax, all that kind of stuff. We can visually see Charlotte being very difficult to deal with. And this is just another thing on that laundry list of Charlotte being an absolute headache. But Becky isn't that much better. You know, ever since she's become the top star, she has been unbearable as well. You know, it's gone to her head. Now, at the same time, when it was time to main event WrestleMania, what was this, 2019? There can only be one main event. It was initially supposed to be Ronda Rousey versus Charlotte. Everybody knows that. They even, again, Becky was supposed to do the job to Ronda at Survivor Series. But then Nia Jax did her the wonderful favor of breaking her face. This meant that Charlotte got to take Becky's spot at Survivor Series and face Ronda Rousey. That's also why they did a disqualification in that match, because it was supposed to be Charlotte and Ronda at WrestleMania. But Becky ended up being one of the hottest stars in the company, and therefore they put her in the main event of WrestleMania. And they had to find some way to shoehorn Becky in. That means shoehorn Charlotte in. Because if you give Becky Charlotte's spot, you're causing a problem, right? You're causing a big, big issue. So they decided to split the baby by making a triple threat match, which, of course, makes no sense because Charlotte didn't have any business being there. And so this, you know, professional jealousy, professional issues have boiled over to personal issues. And you know what? I'm okay with it. Like I said, you can only have one top dog, and it's going to be like that. You know, people are going to get into it when there can only be one top spot. And this is why the brand extension is a good thing, because they don't need to work together. If they don't want to work together because they don't like each other, or Charlotte has a personal issue with Becky and Becky doesn't have any problem with Charlotte, whatever the case may be, they don't have to work together. You can put one of them on Raw, but the other one on SmackDown, which is exactly what they did. And You don't have to deal with that anymore. Now, as far as nobody else wanting to work with Charlotte, the reason why I don't believe that is because Charlotte is going to have the most TV time. And if you're going to get over, you need somebody who the company has invested in order to elevate you. Now, Charlotte is a tyrant. You know, she can elevate you like she has done with others. She's helped Sasha Banks and Becky Lynch tremendously in getting them to the next level. Again, Charlotte was the one they were pushing from the beginning, right? It took for Charlotte to really get over before she can make Sasha, before she can bring in Becky and lift them both up to the main event. But Charlotte could also be the reason why you don't get anywhere. You know, she could be the one that could poo-poo your ideas and poo-poo things that you want to do. You know, she could bury you in a promo if she wanted to, and nobody's going to say anything because she's Charlotte. You know, so you have that issue. That's always that temperamental thing that, you know, that she has. But she is very good. You know, I mean, it's hard for me to be upset at Charlotte knowing how many guys have that same attitude. How many, you know, Shawn Michaels had that, Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, the Ultimate Warrior, all these guys, all these guys who, you know, you sit back in history and you read about them and they got that doesn't work for me, brother. You know, um, that's how you stay at the top. You stay at the top by handpicking your opponents and handpicking your wins and your losses and making sure that everything is as solid as it can possibly be and it doesn't make you look too bad. So when Charlotte has this gigantic ego and she's saying to herself, you know what, I'm going to come out of this thing looking like shit. I don't want to do it. I'll rather drop the title so you can do your title switch with Bianca if you want to. And then they like, no, it has to be you. Then, of course, she's going to be like, ugh, I got to do this with her and I don't want to do anything with her. And Becky is kind of like, well, you know, I'm in this position. I get to come back, be the champion. They treated me like the top star. There can only be one. We can't be on the same brand, you know, because we don't get along. Then it makes sense that, you know, the moment they have to do anything together, things are going to fall apart. So I think that the idea that the locker room is behind Becky makes sense because Charlotte, I've said it once, I've said it 100 times, what she did with Kairi Sane, when Kairi Sane was hurt and Charlotte continued beating on her and kicking her and all that kind of stuff, was completely unprofessional. She probably should have been fined and suspended for it. Becky Lynch was in that same match, and what Becky Lynch did was roll Kairi Sane under the ring because she knew Kairi Sane was concussed. She protected her and rolled her under the ring. Compared to what Charlotte did, which is beat the shit out of her while she was concussed and, you know, was yelling at her and stuff. Completely unnecessary, completely uncalled for. And that, you know, again, stuff you can see makes people believe that Charlotte is a bitch, you know, and nobody should like her because why would you like her? But she's also very good, you know? So you got that Shawn Michaels thing going on with Charlotte. While Becky Lynch has sort of the Bret Hart, you know, she can be a little up her own ass, but she's also pretty good. She's also very over. She's the top star. She probably sells more merchandise than Charlotte. She probably has better drawing segments than Charlotte. She gets better crowd reactions than Charlotte. She's actually more favorably liked by her peers than Charlotte because she's worked all over the place. She knows what it's like to be on the independents. She's known what it's like to suffer major injuries. Everybody has all this respect for Becky because of her, you know, how long her career has been. I think Becky Lynch started wrestling at like 19, and she didn't really start getting on until she was 30. So it took a while. And then, of course, all those years of she was just kind of like a no-name on SmackDown. It created a lot of sympathy for Becky. So even though Becky is being a bitch too, when she's taking all these unnecessary pot shots at Charlotte on Twitter about her cheekbones and about her boobs and about her boobs leaking and all that kind of stuff, even though she's being a bitch about that, people kind of see the ha, she's punching up. While anything Charlotte does is Charlotte punching down. And you have to understand there are people who see things that way. That, you know, Charlotte is this, princess that is handpicked by Vince to be the star of the company. And there is plenty of evidence that that is true. While Becky is the sort of, let's call it like a construction worker, the day laborer who managed to get to this, top spot and knows the ins and outs of the business and all that kind of stuff, and is more professional, especially about putting people over and making other people look good and stuff like that, which I will agree. Becky is much better at making other people look good. She's actually less selfish than Charlotte. So we can agree on that. But I'm not in anybody's camp. I'm not Team Becky or Team Charlotte. They're both bitches. They're just bitches differently. Becky being unnecessarily unfair to Charlotte. She's not the only one with boob implants backstage. She's not the only one. So why is it people keep messing with Charlotte about it? She's not the only one getting plastic surgery. But she's the only one people pick on about the whole plastic surgery stuff. But Charlotte is a headache. She continuously has these issues backstage where she gets into it with other people. And then there's this perception that her on-screen character will not allow anybody else to get over. And she does a really good job of playing into that. Like I said about the Nikki Ash thing. She went out of her way to bury Nikki. It's like completely uncalled for. But to me, I'm not Team Becky or Team Charlotte. But let's also humor this thing, since I know it's going to come up. People asking the infamous $1 million question: what's going to happen if Charlotte leaves? If Charlotte decides she doesn't want to work there anymore, she wants to go work with her fiance in AEW. She wants out of WWE. All right, so let's say she's fired right now. And 90 days. What's 90 days from now? What is it? January, February? All right, so she shows up in AEW in February. What's going to change? Nothing. She's still going to be the best women's wrestler in the world, because I believe Charlotte is the best. Her promo skills are, I don't know how she is without a script. But Britt Baker also has scripts, whether people want to believe it or not. I can just tell that she does. Then you have this situation where spoiled brat Charlotte is in a position where she's not really the top girl anymore. But everybody's going to see her as the top girl because she was at the top in WWE. Then you're also going to have Britt Baker, who everybody's going to consider being the top girl, and it's her time. Remember, the AEW fan base works a lot differently than the WWE fan base. So if Charlotte comes in and beats Britt Baker, then AEW instantly becomes TNA, and everything, they just put the title on ex-WWE guys and all that kind of stuff. But if they don't put the belt on Charlotte immediately, then Charlotte becomes like Andrade and Malachi Black and Miro and all the other people that essentially are brought in to fill the card and be some mid-card bit player. And that's not going to make her happy at all. She's going to be upset about that too. Because it's not just working in WWE. When you have personal problems, the problems are personal, which means when she leaves, she picks up her bag and carries it away with her. So whether she goes to AEW or not, if she's a bitch, she's going to be a bitch everywhere she goes. Doesn't matter if she changes her name from Charlotte to Ashley and works in Orlando and Jacksonville every other week. It's not going to matter. She's still going to be a bitch. And people are still going to be like, man, she's a headache to deal with. Now, she may have less opportunity to pull political games because she's not going to have the history. She's very ingrained in the WWE system right now. That gives her a lot of political power. So she's not going to have that in AEW, but she will have the star power in a division that desperately needs it because there's only one star. They need at least another one. AEW has a good division right now. You have one star in Britt Baker and a bunch of bit players. Everybody else is a bit player. If you add another star to that position, all of a sudden you changed the concept entirely. Charlotte has more experience than Britt Baker. She's better than Britt Baker, especially in the ring. She's far more athletic. She's less likely to get hurt, even though she's more likely to have leaking boobs. And she's going to be somebody that folks have seen nationally for 8 years now. Has it been 8 years? Yeah, about 8 years now. Maybe 7. that they've been seeing it as marketed as the main event of WrestleMania and as a top star for 7 or 8 years. Britt Baker cannot compete with that. No matter how many people chant DMD, nobody cares if somebody who is a bigger star shows up. It's like, to give a good example, it's like Hulk Hogan and Sting. It's like Sting is the top guy in WCW. Yeah, that's great. Thumbs up, buh. But when Hulk Hogan comes in, he's still Hulk Hogan, and he's going to overshadow Sting. No matter how big Sting thought he was never Hulk Hogan. Just like, no matter how big people think Britt Baker is, she ain't nowhere in the same neighborhood as Charlotte. As far as somebody that is a spokesman person for the brand, somebody who people have seen, somebody who people can have done interviews with, and all the media training Charlotte has had, I mean, it's just no competition. So, at that point, what do you do? Now, if you're WWE and Charlotte wants to quit, some people will say, oh, that'd be a big loss for WWE. I would say absolutely, it will be a big loss. Because unlike a lot of the other people that we have been talking about, the Kevin Owens and the Bryan Danielsons and the CM Punks and all that kind of stuff, Charlotte, it would be one person that they recruited, trained in every facet of the business, media training, physical training, psychology, everything. She got everything from WWE. She would be like the first one that I can think of that was built from the ground up by WWE that left and became a big star. Because I know Miro was another one they recruited, trained, and everything too, right? But Charlotte would be the one that was like a huge star that left. But it will open up so many more possibilities and opportunities for a lot of the other women who are sitting in the back feeding Wade Keller stories about how nobody wants to work with Charlotte. That's a great spot for a Toni Storm or a Liv Morgan or a Zelina Vega or somebody like that who is like, oh, if Charlotte wants to take herself out of the pool, great. It might suck for the quarter hour because Charlotte gets to cut a 10-minute promo and maintain at least some level of interest. So there's going to be somebody who's going to have to fill that spot, though. And that spot's going to be wide open for somebody who's probably going to be younger and, maybe not as well groomed. So if you're a Bianca Belair or a Rhea Ripley or somebody like that, a Raquel Gonzalez or something, Charlotte leaving can only help you, So, I mean, Charlotte can willingly give up her spot if she wants to and try to and think maybe that she's going to get a spot over in AEW that's going to be similar or the same, make it a lateral move, but it's not. And a lot of people seem to think that it is. And I know that it's due to people's belief that AEW is number one in some demographic or other, or it's a solid number two or all that kind of stuff. Even if it was a solid number two, why would you want to go from being number one in number one to being number one and number two, right? Being the top star in the top wrestling promotion, not just currently, but of all time, versus being the number one star in a promotion that has to heavily rely on demos in order to make a gigantic argument about its validity as a wrestling company. It's valid based off of one demographic, or one metric. Even though they do pretty well, I think, as far as merchandising is concerned and ticket sales. So why would you do that? It's not a lateral move. See, going from WWF to WCW in some respects was seen as a lateral move. WCW was seen as it could beat WWF in the ratings. Therefore, you could reasonably say WCW is number one. So if you jump ship from WWF to WCW, you don't really lose that much of anything. Even if you lose your spot, if you're not like a top guy, then it doesn't matter. If you're a mid-carder in WWF and you go and be a mid-carder in WCW, so what? Look at with Jeff Jarrett. He was bouncing back and forth the whole time. Didn't make a lick of difference to either company whether he was there or not. But for somebody like Charlotte, completely different. Even if she can get the same money in AEW, the reach is going to be different. And her spot is going to be different because their philosophy is going to be different. She's not going to be able to get that spot, and then risk alienating all of the Britt Baker fans by screwing her over. So I mean, it's a bird in the hand versus two in the bush. Charlotte can either say, look, cannot work with Becky. I don't want to work with Becky. Keep Becky on SmackDown or Raw, whatever she is now, and I'll be on the other brand. If, whenever you come up with this idea that I'm going to work with Becky, just know that it's not going to happen. I don't want it. I don't want to deal with it. And sub somebody else in. I don't want to deal with her. Which is the best way of handling the situation. Just stay away from her. This idea about, oh, this is going to be the straw that broke the camel's back. She's finally going to leave. I don't know. Is it possible? I guess anything's possible in the world. But I don't see it. I don't see it happening. Top people at the top, it take a lot to get them out of there. Once you become an institution, usually you have to be pushed out or, gracefully bow out. Like Bryan Danielson. Like, he was an institution in WWE. He had to gracefully bow out. There was never going to be a situation where they were going to fire him. Or, they might have forced him into retirement again. But they were never going to actually fire him and push him out. They may just, move him to the side a little bit where he's still there, but there's no emphasis on him. Charlotte could be in that position one day. So she's going to have to self-select herself out of this situation. If she really, really, really is unhappy in WWE, which she might be because she is having a lot of public blow-ups and a lot of public problems with WWE, then she's going to have to self-select. She's going to take herself out of it. They're not going to fire her because she got into an argument with Becky Lynch. That's stupid. They're not on the same brand anymore. Anyway, they don't have to do any segments together anymore. So WWE is just going to be like, well, you go off to SmackDown, Becky's going to go off to Raw, and never the two shall meet unless it's the Royal Rumble or a Survivor Series or something like that. You two don't even have to cross paths. There, done and done. So now Charlotte is like, okay, well, good, great. But then she's got this other spoiled brat on the same roster, Sasha Banks. She ain't much better than Becky, and she certainly ain't much better than Charlotte. Sasha Banks will throw a tantrum on you in a second. She's enough. It's like having two Shawn Michaels on the roster at that point. I don't see how the hell they're going to be able to coexist. So it is what it is, but WWE created this problem by making these women spoiled. So just they're going to have to work it out. But I don't think Charlotte's going anywhere. I don't think Becky's like, the hero, the shining knight of the locker room. If anybody who believes that Becky Lynch is the innocent one in this situation has not been paying attention. Becky has been needling and prodding Charlotte for years. If there's going to be a fight of any kind, they need to just let it happen and see what happens. Maybe they'll be friends again afterwards, like boys on the schoolyard. Let them throw fists and let's see what happens afterwards. Until then, just keep them apart. Let's keep them apart. Who cares? But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Like this video, share this video, subscribe to the channel. And I'll talk to you guys later.